Hello, I'm Michael Turner. It's my privilege to be the head of school here at Shipley. Welcome to our all-school celebration of Black History Month. We're delighted to have you with us today. You know, it occurs to me that it was last year's all-school assembly celebrating Black history. It was the last time we were all together in one place last February. So much has happened since then. So much history has happened since then. And it seems an appropriate marker now to look back that it's been a little over a year since we were all together to dwell on that idea of history and to mark time and what that means. And so with that, you know, you may recall, maybe you don't, that at last year's assembly, I talked about my own ancestry, and that it seems kind of silly that a guy with my background, you know, and I put up on the screen my ancestry.com, the DNA, that a guy who was definitely from Europe in terms of his ancestry, that I would be the person at the beginning of the assembly pointing out, you know, the importance of Black history. And what I said then still holds true now, that while the history that we celebrate in this assembly in this month is not my personal history, it is 100% and essentially our history, not just here at Shipley, but as Americans. And so I'm delighted that this year's theme, or one of the themes of this year's Black History Month Assembly, is that Black history is American history. And it really is. And at a time when we have all been challenged, to think about what that is, to think about, you know, what is an American, and who gets to be an American, and who gets to decide. These are profound questions that have challenged all of us over the last 12 months. And so as we reflect on that, one of the thoughts I have is that one of the best ways to answer those questions about America is to seek to see and to hear, to know and to understand, to appreciate and to celebrate the history of the place and of the people that we call America. And that really is what we do here today and what we do throughout the month of February. But not merely in February, because it is essential. It is an essential component of what we do all the time, the study and the celebration of Black history. It's that, you know, and its accomplishments, its struggles, its beauty and its pain. It's encapsulation of all that it is to be American. When we study that and when we celebrate that, when we do that together, as not just, again, here at Shipley, but when we do that as Americans, it's what brings us together as a community. It gives us perspective on history and perspective and understanding of ourselves. So I'll repeat this year what I said last year, which is whether or not the history that we study and that we celebrate, that the stories, that you see today and throughout the month, whether they are your personal stories, whether you feel connected to them in your own identity, or not, right? They are essentially and quintessentially our story, our stories as members of the Shipley community and as Americans. And so again, thank you for being with us here today. And with that, I'd like to hand things off to the leadership of our Black Student Union to kick off the meat of our program. Take care.
Desmond Tutu once stated, "Bringing people together is what I call Ubuntu, which means I am because we are." Far too often, people think of themselves as just individuals, separated from one another, whereas you are connected and what you do affects the whole world. When you do well, it spreads out. It is for the whole of humanity. As Black people fought for the rights to be free, they were not only doing it for themselves, but for the humanity of our country. In American history, far too often has the oppression of Black people been swept under the rug. The fight for justice by Black people was not only for our own communities, but for other marginalized groups who were also stripped of their freedoms. In the words of Martin Luther King Jr., injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
The history of Black people and the influence Black people have on this nation cannot be contained within 28 days. It is imperative that we think deeply about who and what made this country what it is and who will make it what it can be. Our history has been watered down and our strides have been erased, all to fit a narrative. But today, we share the truth about our ancestors and the power within our communities. Black history is American history. Over the summer, the feeling of outrage translated into worldwide protests for an end to police brutality, racial injustice, and for this country to address systematic racism. Some of us participated in the fight and used our voice to demand change, while others watched on screens. Well, let this serve as a wake-up call that everyone has a role to play in the movement. No progress can be made if everyone does not come together. It is your time to challenge systems, amplify voices, and question the norms.
Shipley as an institution must come together and join the fight for justice. It is our duty as change makers to call out the wrongs committed against all groups. Although it may not affect you directly, to be silent in situations of injustice is to be complicit. We have all seen the system designed to oppress Black people continue because others have failed to use their voice and take a stand. Now, what will you take away from this? What will you do for humanity?
Thank you for that. Our Black Student Union has provided such wonderful leadership in this year like no other. So I appreciate their continued leadership today. Next, we're going to hand things off to our jazz ensemble. So put your hands together for our jazz ensemble.
Been working and working, but I still got so terribly far to go.
As we celebrate Black History Month, we look back on the rich legacy of African American musicians and their impact on modern music in all styles. As you listen to the Shipley Ensemble play Cannibal out of his work song, take a moment to note that African American work songs originally developed in the 17th century during the era of slavery. The call and response phrasing allowed the workers to stay in time with each other and orally preserve African history and culture.
Work songs, African American spirituals, and the music of the rural South began to blend together into what we know today as the blues. In the port city, New Orleans, blues music combined with European march-influenced ragtime and Afro-Caribbean rhythms to create the American art form we know today as jazz. This new syncopated and improvised music followed the Great Migration, which was the mass movement of millions of African Americans to New York and Chicago, which eventually became a part of cultural movements such as the Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s and 30s.
Fast forward to the 1940s and 50s. Blues and jazz have evolved into a new genre of music known as rhythm and blues, which would pave the way for what we know today as rock and roll. As this musical craze sweeps the nation, white musicians such as the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, imitated the works of their Black counterparts, such as Little Richard and Big Mama Thornton. It wasn't until recent years that the contributions of Black women in particular, such as Thornton and Sister Rosetta Tharpe, have been widely recognized for their role in the birth of rock and roll.
One can't talk about African American music without mentioning the musical, stylistic, and cultural impacts of hip-hop. This music evolved in the Bronx amongst African American and Latinx communities, and pays tribute to the music that influenced it by sampling beats, bass lines, and tracks. This created an entirely new form of lyrical and musical expression that continues to permeate all modes of American culture today. As we celebrate the history of our nation's musicians, we remember that all American music is Black music.
Hold it right there while I hit it. Well, I reckon God ought to get it. Been working, working, working.
Thanks to our jazz ensemble for reminding us that jazz music and Black music in general really does sit at the heart of American culture. And now we're going to hand things over to our lower school students. And at the end, we'll learn some new ways to offer applause. So stay tuned for that.
Friends in Mrs. Waddles and Miss Sullivan's class celebrated Black excellence. Students first observed the colorful artwork of local Philly artist Stanley Whitney. Students then created original artwork inspired by his mosaics. Next, they watched videos and talked about prominent Black Americans and their contributions to our world today. The children finished by creating a special applause or cheer for each Black American they studied. Here are 3 pre-K representatives to share their special applause.
Hi, my name is Jasmine. What am I saying?
We're going to have a poet applause. Poet applause.
Good job, Amanda Gorman.
Good job, Amanda Gorman. Poetry applause. Show us poetry applause again. Yes. Well done, Jazzy.
My name is Sylvia. Here's my applause.
Good job, Misty Copeland.
Good job, Misty Coachman.
Good job.
Oh, hello. My name is Zahid. Good job, Baba.
Okay, that was adorable. Thanks to our lower school students, Ms. Grillo, for putting that together, and for all of our presenters today. All of our students did a wonderful job sharing with us all that makes this month and this celebration special, Black History Month, and for all the things that have been going on campus. So thanks to everybody, and once again, thanks for being with us. We're going to close today. We're here live. I've changed clothing. That was yesterday. We recorded that, but we're here live in the common room behind our Shipley sisters, or in front of our Shipley sisters. And I want to introduce to you members of our middle school race and identity club, who are going to close with another reason to give applause. So they're going to be reading portions of Amanda Gorman's The Hill We Climb that captivated so many of us last month during the inaugural. So we're going to close with that, again, reminding us of how important student voice is, and reminding us why we do all that we do here at Shipley, and as a way to close and celebrate the power and the impact of Black History Month. So I want to introduce Rafa and Peyton, Maddie, and Ava Janae are gonna close us out. So Rafa, go ahead, take it away.
When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? We learn that our notions of what just isn't always justice.
Yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but we lift our gaze to stand, not to stand what between. But we lift our gaze not to what stands between us, but what stands before us.
Because being American is more than the pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be.
Because one thing is for certain, every known nook of our nation and every corner called our country will emerge battered and beautiful. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Thank you all. And again, thank you for being with us. We appreciate you taking this time to celebrate Black History Month with us, to see your own history, right, in this collective, our history that is Black History Month, that is our American history. And we'll close echoing those words of Ms. Gorman, right, to not just see it, but to be it. So again, thank you. Have a wonderful day. Take care.